So first, we're going to have the first presenter, Dr. Adri from Malaysia. Please, Dr. Adri. Dr. Adri is a senior lecturer from Universitas Kebangsaan Malaysia. So he will present about is mangrove restoration being done right? So it's very challenging question. So let's hear about it.
Selamat siang and good afternoon to Dr. Frida Siddiq and I first would like to thank the organizer, the Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fisheries Indonesia, for the invitation and for having all of us here today. Appreciate the invitation and honored to be here indeed. And it's good to be around all my good friends here today and all the participants. So can you see my screen, Dr. Frida?
Good.
Okay. All right. So as correctly pointed out by Dr. Frida, Bapak Nyoman and Dr. Teja in their opening speeches just now, we basically do not have much time to waste on making bad and wrong decisions pertaining to the sustainability and the status of our immediate future. So it is our responsibility, the current generation, basically to ensure and to collectively uphold the triple bottom lines of sustainability. So in essence, our environment, our economy and our social well-being. So one of the key identified global missions that we all have agreed and we have to achieve is to maintain the global climate condition by perhaps reversing our negative contributions and slow down the inertia of the consequences of our actions. So before we even speak about restoration, I would like to highlight this one important point. So one way to make things right is by protecting what we have left. So we can do that by conserving and protecting our tropical rainforests, our green lungs, the kidneys of the earth, basically all the wetlands, and particularly the subject of our discussions today, the mangroves. Mangroves are perhaps the most unique and at the same time versatile and extremely important ecosystems located in between land and sea, the tropical and subtropical zone. I do always market it as the trademark or signature habitat of our ecosystem of the tropics. And particularly important for us in ASEAN, all the countries combined, we collectively have the highest number, the largest abundance and the extent compared to other regions throughout the equator. So we have to be proud of that. But then, remarkably, as pointed out by Dr. Frida also, and maybe Dr. Dan Fries will delve into this later, we are also the hotspot of the global mangrove loss. What a coincidence, right? Many of the nations, in fact, all of the countries are striving to develop. We are all striving to push for the social and economic pillars at the expense of our environment, particularly our coastal ecosystems. We exploit the coastal lands for agriculture and in this case aquaculture combined and urban development. And we left the ponds abandoned after several years before other kind of developments or encroachments seep in instead of rehabilitating. We mine, we dredge sands and coastal land to supply for development on land. And we pollute our rivers and put extra pressures on them. So the effluents, the runoffs, these all ultimately puts pressures on the downstream ecosystems to mediate. So these pictures are just to open up your eyes and minds. Basically, we wouldn't need to talk about restoration if we have all of these habitats healthy and intact. But then to rectify our past mistakes, maybe current mistakes too, which now coincides with extreme weather events, climate change if you like, we have to do our part in conserving mangroves the right way, the correct manner. So have a look at this picture. I'm pretty sure it's quite familiar all throughout ASEAN. And speaking for the many countries and governments in our regions that were affected by the 2004 tsunami and the series of typhoons and tropical storms, many millions or billions of ringgit, rupiah, dongs, pesos, bahts, dollars and energy have been spent to react to the impacts. But mainly, I would say, panic response. Restoring mangrove is a complex process, right, that needs to be founded on the principles of ecosystem management. So a common mistake in mangrove restoration is that they are perceived as just a planting activity. Not choosing the right species for the right site. Planting and replanting of mangroves are simply done anywhere, everywhere along the coast, including beaches, mudflats, and seagrass beds. And oftentimes, planting activities are being carried out to be justified as actions to mitigate climate change, as well as for future and upcoming impacts and disasters. Surely, many of these activities actually resulted in huge losses and failures. Oftentimes, the location, the sediment, the hydrology, species diversity are not taken into consideration, hence planting the wrong species at the wrong site. And also, local communities, scientific communities were not properly engaged and heard. But I hope the attitude has changed quite progressively around the world, hopefully. Knowledge on mangroves, knowledge on mangrove restoration is available, and it is our continuous role as researchers, especially, we have to play a role to advise and consult the authorities all throughout the tropics. So basically, mangrove is a dynamic ecosystem. They may propagate seaward if the sediment and elevation stabilize, and they may retreat and move landward with the increase of sea level. The function, I'm pretty sure all of you know, is as nurseries for coastal protection and whatnot. But then, by building bunds or seawalls and other physical structures, we inhibit these natural processes, these dynamic processes from taking place. And one huge advice here is that mangroves require buffer to play the buffering role to protect our coast and to protect ourselves as coastal communities. They will not survive in flooded or stagnant water for a long period of time, and they live in an already high pressure and stressful environment, so we must not add extra pressure on them. And the best way to understand mangrove restoration or to practice good restoration is to emulate the recovery processes that mangroves go through after an impact from natural disturbances. These are some of the examples. So there are various types and extent of impacts posed by nature disturbances, and the way mangroves react to these disturbances vary. This, for example, is a series of steps in the regeneration cycle of a mangrove forest caused by the death of a group of trees that create gaps in the canopy. So depending on the size of gaps and types of disturbances, there will be slight variation in the recovery design and timescale. But the good thing is this optimal amount of disturbance impacts actually catalyzes natural rejuvenation of the whole forest. This also defines mangrove as the dynamic ecosystem. And if I may, also define them as a forever young ecosystem. So the younger generation of plants, if you can see from this image, they have the chance, the opportunity to grow after the death of the parent trees or the older trees. And these should be studied and to be understood to understand good restoration activities if we need to assist.